Hi everyone, I am Mr. Phonova. I am looking forward to this year's photography flagship competition. The focus this time will be on two new flagships, Vivo's X300 Pro and OPPO's Find X9 Pro. At the same time, the mainstream brands are many people's choices, iPhone 17 Pro Max and Samsung's S25 Ultra. We are also doing this big competition as a standard. We will also try our best to arrange a New Year's competition. Anyway, we can also find out the photography effect of these four phones under different brands, especially in terms of the style and adjustment of their image effects. From day to night shooting, the long-term portrait shooting effect of the concert, and video shooting. Each of them in terms of functionality, operation, and actual effect. Which part is similar, and which part is the biggest difference? The focus of this video is to talk about the actual shooting effect of the camera and video shooting effect. Later, we will also have a complete AI function and performance battery endurance test. If you are a fan of mobile photography, where are the similarities and differences in the image effect and shooting experience of different brands? Let's go to the video. First of all, we will summarize their basic specifications and appearance design. This time is the Find X9 Pro and Vivo X300 Pro. The two phones on the screen border are extremely narrow. On the X300 Pro and Find X9 Pro, the screen border is also extremely narrow at 1.1 mm. The 6.78-inch screen itself is not small, but it is not the biggest effect of the 6.9-inch screen on the iPhone and Samsung S25 Ultra. Especially the S25 Ultra, which is relatively square and also has a narrow screen border of 6.9-inch, it feels like the biggest screen and a little more square. In particular, in terms of workmanship and hand feeling, the Samsung S25 Ultra has a titanium metal border, and the glass surface of the back of the machine is slightly smoother. Indeed, it feels like there is a psychological factor. It is slightly on the titanium border of the four phones, but it does feel harder and smoother and more delicate. The iPhone of this generation also uses a metal body made of alloy. The curved edges of the metal body are also rounded. The texture of the alloy will be similar to that of the X300 Pro and Find X9 Pro. Especially in the design of these two phones, the metal border has made some obvious 2.5D or 3D curves. It feels significantly rounder than the Samsung phone. It depends on personal preference. At the moment, we don't know if the next generation of Samsung will continue to use the titanium metal border, and whether the shape of the body will continue to be square or there will be some changes. We are also closely concerned about this. And finally, the workmanship of the body is the anti-reflective coating on the surface of the screen. The iPhone 17 Pro Max of this generation, the 17 series, has been increased. In fact, the anti-reflective coating of the S25 Ultra is slightly more effective. Compared to Vivo and OPPO, it has not yet been added. This anti-reflective coating is mainly noticeable when shooting in a complex light source or outdoors. The rest of the body hardware, IP68 and IP69 anti-reflective coating, are also available on Vivo and OPPO. Samsung S25 Ultra and iPhone 17 Pro Max also have IP68 anti-reflective coating. The ultrasonic sensor is also available on Samsung S25 Ultra, Vivo X300 Pro, and OPPO Find X9 Pro. The iPhone continues to use Face ID. All four devices have dual speakers. Finally, in terms of hardware, there is one last thing worth mentioning. In terms of battery capacity, the Vivo X300 Pro has 6,510 mAh, while the OPPO Find X9 Pro has 7,500 mAh. This is an exaggerated battery capacity. In the next video, we will do a complete AI test, performance test, and battery test. In terms of performance, the Find X9 Pro and Vivo X300 Pro are theoretically the next-generation flagship processors of 2026. They are MediaTek Dimensity 9500. They use the 3nm technology of the third-generation desktop power supply. In terms of power consumption, it will drop sharply to more than 40%. In terms of gaming and performance, there will be an obvious improvement. Of course, it's the performance. The most important point this time is the comparison of the cameras. The Vivo X300 Pro is the main focus of the camera. Its main lens uses the new Sony LY328 sensor, 1/1.28 inches. In addition, the telephone lens uses an OPPO lens with 85mm and Zeiss joint technology. In terms of controlling light emission and the dispersion effect on the edge of the paper, it will be one of the best in the market. The telephone lens has a 2-megapixel sensor and a 1/1.4-inch HPB sensor that is custom-made with Samsung. On the other hand, the Find X9 Pro has also been improved. This time it uses a 2-megapixel telephone lens with a 70mm lens and a 1/1.56-inch sensor. But of course, when it comes to photography, the tone, the smoothness of the light, and the overall adjustment of the software will have an impact on the final photo. Especially the feeling we perceive with the naked eye will be more obvious than the small details of extreme zoom. In contrast, the iPhone 17 Pro Max uses a 4x100mm optical zoom lens, and the sensor size is significantly improved. It can do 8x optical zoom. Finally, the Samsung S25 Ultra will have a refresh rate in the next few months, so this time it's just a reference. A 3x telephone lens and a 5x 50-megapixel lens can do 10x optical zoom. Also, on the other hand, Samsung's 2-megapixel lens is placed on the main lens. In terms of actual effect, both the Vivo X300 Pro and the Find X9 Pro can use 2-megapixel telephone lens. Before we compare the ultra-high-resolution telephone lens, we can also verify the true power of the main lens and telephone lens. There is a difference in the focal length of the lens itself. Find X9 Pro has a 70mm focal length, X300 Pro has an 85mm focal length. S20Ultra has a 50-megapixel lens, but it is a 115mm telephone lens. In the case of different sizes of sensors, resolution, and focal length, Vivo X300 Pro's telephone lens has the sharpest growth in full pixel output. In addition, X300 Pro and OPPO's Find X9 Pro also use telephone lenses to take telephone and macro shots. They can also take close-up macro shots by adding digital zoom. On the S15 Ultra and iPhone 17 Pro Max, they also use super wide-angle lenses to take close-up macro shots. They can also use digital zoom in macro mode to take close-up macro shots. In terms of detail retention, there is a closer effect than expected. There is no difference in framing. 200 million pixels, full pixel output is not often used in most scenarios. Instead, it is the highest pixel zoom in the 12-megapixel digital mode. In fact, this is the field of view that we are shooting in, which is already beyond what we can see with our naked eyes. In my daily application, I think that the average distance between 12x to 30x is a real distance to take a photo or draw a picture. In fact, the actual effect is closer to the expected level, but if you have to divide it up, the Vivo X300 Pro has a 1/1.4-inch sensor plus 85mm telephone lens. In fact, in low light conditions, it is true that with some calculation, it is relatively clean, sharp, and low noise. And S25 Ultra and Find X9 Pro are actually very close to each other in terms of details. It's just that there are more differences in calculation or growth style. And we have also noticed that in the extreme dark light conditions, the iPhone's optical flares still exist, while S25 Ultra, X300 Pro, and Find X9 Pro have a relative advantage in terms of control. First of all, in 1x low light conditions, the image is relatively far away from the phone, and the screen is relatively small.